Greenlight bookstore. My name's Josie. I'm the Events and Marketing Manager here at Greenlight. We are so excited to be hosting tonight's event with the Writers Rock Showcase, presenting the new annual review, and we'll have lots of readers here for you tonight reading excerpts from it. So you're in for a really excellent evening. Before I turn things over to them, just a few housekeeping things. If you could turn off or silence your cell phones so they don't go off during the event, that would be great. We do ask that masks are worn the whole time you're in the store unless you are here at the podium. If you're here at the podium, feel free to take it off so we can all hear you without a microphone. And we've got copies of the annual review for purchase. But on to the good stuff. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Josh from the Writers Rock.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Good to see all of you. My name is Josh. I'm the creative director of the Writers Rock. Most of you already know that. So, what are we here to do tonight? Tonight is a reading celebrating the Writers Rock Annual Review. This is our second magazine, and it is a collection of anybody who worked with us in the past year who wanted to submit something. So the way that we identify this as being different, and the way that this is a reflection of the Writers Rock in general, is that in other literary magazines you submit and then someone decides, yeah, this is good enough, it'll get in. Which means it's just a collection of one person's taste. But the Writers Rock, for those of you who don't know, is a community creative writing center designed to just make space for anybody to do a little bit more creative writing than they already are. We do not make you apply with a sample, you just gotta show up. The point being, taste is a tricky, finicky thing. More important than good or bad is, are you doing the thing you like? And we're making space for you to do the thing you like in a community of others. That's why we're all here tonight. I know some of you are meeting each other in person for the first time, which is very exciting for me. It's kind of the whole point. And so it would feel antithetical to that to then say that isn't good enough to be in the magazine. So instead, we have given a prompt, which is breaking the rules, which I'm going to get to in a second. And then everyone was invited to write 500 words responding to that prompt. And then whatever they wrote is in the magazine. So as a result, you get a real reflection of our community. I was requested to read something, so I'm going to read the intro, which I feel like encapsulates a good survey of everything you're about to hear, the theme, and just generally what we were thinking about this past year at the Writers Rock. So this is on the first page of the review, which is available for purchase here and in the back. You can do that later. So, there are certain creative writing rules that are so ubiquitous, it's easy to forget that there's no actual governing body enforcing them. You've likely heard a few. Write what you know, show don't tell, or my personal favorite, no adverbs. But where do these rules come from and who do they serve? As Matthew Salas writes in Craft in the Real World, the argument that one should get to know the rules before breaking them is really an argument about who gets to make the rules, and whose rules get to be the norms and determine the exceptions. Much of what we do at the Writers Rock is make space for writers to unlearn the rules that have come between them and their own voice. But that first requires us to become aware of the rules we're unconsciously following all the time. What have you absorbed as the right or wrong way to write? How has that prevented you from trying something else? For our second edition of the annual review, we asked the writers who worked with us the previous year to submit a piece on the topic of breaking the rules. Because it's just as important for us to understand our characters' relationship to the rules of their world as it is for us to understand our own, and it often makes for good reading, too. As readers, we love when a character breaks the rules. It's how we know they're human. But rules come in many forms. There are local laws, cultural norms, and biblical commandments. There are just and unjust rules, and rules we don't even know we're following. What do we learn about characters when they break the rules, and what do they learn about themselves? In the following pages, you'll read about broken curfews, broken promises, and driving while stoned. There will be poems, memoir, and fiction. Most importantly, you'll find a collection of work by writers who took a step back from all the ways they were told their work was supposed to be made, and made it the way they wanted. So you'll be hearing from 8 readers tonight, all of whom interpreted this theme however they wanted to. I'm going to introduce folks, and then we're going to go back and forth between me coming up to give the intros and then reading. We're going to clap after each reading. This is a celebration. Do not hold your applause till the end. We are here to support each other as writers, as readers, as listeners, as people. So, to get started, Annalynne Wasser is a freelance writer and educator living in Brooklyn. Her work has been published at Ranker.com and at various literary magazines such as Flash Fiction Magazine, Bright 8 Press, Bridge 8 Press, and others. She can be found on Twitter at Annalynne Wasser and at her website, annalynwasser.com. Round of applause, please.
All right, thank you very much. Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi. All right. So, this story I'm about to read, I kind of thought of during a period of time where I was getting really, really annoyed about hearing about people refusing to get the COVID vaccine. And then I thought, I mean, it's really easy for me to do that. I'm an adult who can make their own decisions about it. My family is entirely supportive of me doing it. My dad's a scientist. I pretty much have all of the resources to make that choice. But not everybody has that. So I made up a character who is a teenager who has to go against her parents in order to get vaccinated. So that's a lot of what I do when something frustrates me or I don't understand something, is try to write about it and get into someone else's point of view. So with that in mind, I will now read the story. So this is called And It'll Be Worth It. And I realize I should probably take this off, even though it's sort of on theme to have it on, I guess. But so you can hear me. All right. When the pharmacist asks if Lenora has her parents' permission to get a COVID vaccine, she hands over a crisp type note on premium printer paper with her best approximation of her father's signature scrawled at the bottom. Her chest feels like a geode that's been cracked open. She's sure the pharmacist will peer at the note over her cat-eye glasses and declare it a fake. But the pharmacist doesn't even look at it. After Lenora fills out a release form, the pharmacist gestures towards a line of folding chairs. The only empty chair is so close to a pool noodle display that the green one grazes Lenora's head when she sits. The lady with an undercut that she's sitting next to is wearing a purple KN95 mask. Lenora doesn't own any masks. Her parents say that breathing in her own trapped air will give her a fungal infection in her lungs. She doesn't want this lady who is texting a photo of a Samoyed to someone named Honey to get a fungal infection in her lungs. She thinks about telling her not to wear a mask. Then she thinks that her parents don't know any more about masks than they do about vaccines. If she's getting the vaccine against their wishes, maybe she should wear a mask against their wishes too. But are they wrong? Maybe she's making a mistake. Sweat shimmers down the back of her neck. It'll destroy your fertility, her mother said when Lenora turned 16 and suggested she get the vaccine. And if you do get pregnant, the baby will have all sorts of problems because the vaccine mutated your DNA, her father added, assuming you don't get cancer and die first. Lenora had learned enough in science class to know better, but she doesn't want her parents getting angry. Lenora's a good girl. She gets straight A's in school and never stays out past curfew. She's never had a boyfriend, and not solely because she wants a girlfriend instead. If a twitch of her mother's lip or the set of her father's shoulders indicates that they're angry, Lenora cries. But she'll be crying harder if she gets COVID, especially if she dies like her cousin Brandon did. After that, Aunt Margot got vaccinated and cut off the rest of the family. She wishes that Brandon were here, starting sword fights with the pool noodles, or that Aunt Margot were here, hugging her and telling her she was doing the right thing. Then maybe she wouldn't be pressing her eye on her eyes to hold in the tears. The lady with the undercut gets called up to get her vaccine. Lenora can't see her mouth, but her brown eyes make it clear that she's smiling. She says, "It's kind of scary, right? But it'll be over just like that, and it'll be worth it." Lenora can't speak, but she can nod and give the lady a thumbs up, tears streaking down her face. It'll be her turn soon.
Okay, next up we have Lisa Greenbaum. Lisa teaches world literature and creative arts classes at a small public high school in the Bronx. She's currently working on a memoir. A round of applause for Lisa.
The piece is called Real Deal. When you think about what it means to be a real teacher, you imagine a professional adult who enters the classroom with grace and confidence. She's well rested and prepared for the week. She has developed her lesson plans and assessments. She knows what comes next from minute to minute and also sees the big picture. She's schooled in differentiated instruction and has given her students enough diagnostics to understand the special needs in her classroom. In those first few years, my educational picture was cracked and smudgy. I was sinking underneath the workload and felt like I was about to hit rock bottom on a daily basis. In early spring of 2004, everything changed. The winter snow was disappearing, and New Yorkers were planting their first flowers in their brownstone pots and sidewalk gardens. Like plants that energized the room, it appeared I had some after-school visitors who would organically enliven my space. They were young boys, Edwin, Walik, and Kesey James. Kesey was belligerent and moody. He splashed arrogance on his face like a bad bottle of cologne. He insisted on coming late to class, brushing off school rules like lingering crumbs at the dinner table. Following the norms were for pussies and punks, but not for Kesey. You can't wear headgear in school, Kesey would wear his do-rag and hat proudly. If the assistant principal asked him to take off his Yankees cap, he would spout obscenities at her and continue walking down the hall. Most students in this neighborhood were defiant and rebellious, but somehow Kesey's disobedience caused me to pause and crave to understand this child standing before me. On those days after school, I was cultivating a bond with one of the most difficult students in the building, a child whose mother was killed on the streets when he was 12, and a father who disappeared from his life. Kesey turned to drug dealing to survive. I turned around and took notice of him. He definitely was beginning to trust me, but he still taunted me in the halls to see what I could handle. One day when he was running his mouth, I decided to take off my teacher uniform. I turned around and gave the finger to this crack dealer. At that moment, he was wildly impressed and told me later that I was being real with him. He could finally trust me. Most people assume that being a real teacher means that you have enough experience to feel confident and secure in front of the classroom. I definitely believe experience and confidence are important tools that enable you to feel like a real teacher. However, I finally felt real to my student when I showed him who was in charge. He couldn't stop laughing after that moment, and we developed a close relationship over the next 15 years.
Thank you, Lisa. Next up, we have Anusha Bansal. Anusha is from Illinois, but now writes from Brooklyn, Waka. She has previously been published in Brown Girl magazine. Her free time, she enjoys reading, baking, and re-watching Fleabag.
I remembered deodorant but forgot perfume, even though it sits on the table right next to my front door. I wiped off my makeup last night, but there was still mascara flaking into my cereal today. I wore a lace bra on this date, but I'm just now realizing that I forgot to change into nicer underwear. Even though I changed my pants twice, I still have no idea what I'm wearing underneath. I do yoga once every 2 weeks, or when I remember to, but I still put it as an interest on my dating profile. That's not a lie, right? I suddenly get stressed that the man across from me will realize I'm not paying attention. I'm desperately trying to listen, but all I can hear is my brain telling me to pay attention. I smile and nod and hope that's the right reaction. I notice the condensation on the glass and become simultaneously hyper-aware of my now wet hand and the growing boob sweat. The heat is melting my smile onto my face. There's a pause in the conversation. A pause. 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 I scramble for appropriate date questions. So what do you do for work? He mentions finance. I go to make a sarcastic comment before I clock that he actually likes it. At least he has fluffy hair. Then I remember my underwear, or rather that I don't remember my underwear. He asks me what I do. I work in marketing. He says that it must be fun. Just as fun as finance. He laughs like it's the funniest sentence he's ever heard. It probably is. I notice red wine stains on my coat pad. Genuinely no memory of how they got there. I don't think I spilled anything recently, but I would believe it if someone told me I did. He asks me what an ideal day for me looks like. I love working from coffee shops. That's true. It's also true that I worked from bed yesterday, and the day before that. But 5 days ago, when a friend asked me to meet up and work together, the coffee shop made me feel really productive. I told her we should do it again sometime. I don't go home with him. Maybe because of the underwear, maybe because he likes working in finance. I do let him kiss me, maybe because of the fluffy hair. He says we should do this again sometime. I'd love that. I only came tonight, so I'd have a story for my friends. The next day, I blink away mascara flakes for an hour. I blink away mascara flakes an hour and 20 minutes past my alarm. I sit on the floor and balance a plate of cold pizza between my knees and my chest, and I remember that yesterday I told him I was a morning person.
Okay, next we have Elisa. Elisa Yalen has her MFA from City College. She is currently residing in New York while she works on her young adult novel. Get a round of applause for Elisa up here.
To try to fly. You could hear the river rushing when you approached it. Tommy had always loved coming out here. It was only a 15-minute walk from his back door to the edge of the water. At 10 years old, his legs felt a little too long and his arms too short, and his mom always insisted on cutting his hair, making it look uneven. His older sisters always talked about the days they had gone through puberty. He was the baby of the family, the special surprise that his parents doted on. But because they weren't expecting him, his room was one of his older sisters, a pale blue. Without any friends to invite over, he could never tell if it was too light and if he should repaint it. In school, he was quiet and tried to never be called on. It wasn't that he didn't know the answers, but that he didn't want to speak in front of the other kids. Hello. Tommy almost fell into the water in surprise. In front of him stood a girl with dark pigtails and pink ribbons. They matched her dress. She had knobby knees and sharp elbows. Hi, Tommy said, awkwardly waving his hand. I think you live next door to me, said Pink Ribbons. Tommy just stared. The house that was closest to him was over 2 miles away, and no one had lived there since before he was born. As if reading his mind, she said, My family just moved into that house down there. We had to tear out the kitchen and repaint all the rooms. But you should come see it. It took the whole summer to build it. She jumped lightly onto the log next to Tommy. Do you know how to swim? Before Tommy could respond, she said, I don't. But Mommy says I don't have to because I can always fly. What? I can fly. You can fly? Can't you? She looked quizzically at Tommy. Well, I guess I've never tried. The more he thought about it, the more he wondered why he hadn't. In school, the teachers had started with the basics of science, gravity, but he had never thought more about it. It was just a fact. You should, she said, moving lightly over the logs towards the running water. He inadvertently moved his hand towards her to make sure she didn't fall in. He was a confident swimmer, but the water was rushing by fast, with the rainy season adding more water than usual. Come with me. She took his hand, and next thing he knew, his feet were off the log, right above the surface of the water. See, she grinned. There's no need to learn how to swim. She gently put Tommy on the log and landed back on the riverbank. Bye! Her pink skirt rustled against the trees. Tommy looked down at his hand, still warm from her touch. Now it was his turn to try to fly.
Okay, thank you. Next up we have Helen Gallagher. Say something now?
There's nothing to say. I'm going to read a poem. It's called Staring Contest. Have you ever held eye contact with the universe? It's always looking at us, impolite to look back, but when raccoons are out in daytime or a little mouse is running in circles on the pavement. Or you're circling the same sidewalks with someone you should not have looked at, but you did. And when they looked back, the universe became impossible to avoid. Watching closely as it split, a banana, in 3 easy segments, one for each of the 2 of you, and one for a third someone you did not know yet. But when you met, you thought maybe they had the 3rd banana piece. And the universe laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed, throwing October leaves down, confetti on park benches where you sat, with both of them on the same day, 2 years apart. Almost said it, almost saw it all the way through, but looked away instead.
Okay, we have next. Tim Mack is a writer and karaoke enthusiast in New York City. His writing has been featured in New York Magazine as The Strategist, October Hill Magazine, Rigorous, Red River Review, and more. Please welcome Tim.
Red, white, and brouhaha. My father's face was flushed after a few sips at the nearly empty I'll Be There brewery in Norwalk. Heading home to Massachusetts after a funeral in Hartford, we stopped in to toast his departed friend from their Chinese village. The bar had towering tanks in spaces we weren't allowed. To your Uncle Shin, we clinked glasses. Ah, life is not guaranteed. He shook his head as the fading sun hit the dust hanging in the air. I sipped a hazy IPA called Nocturnal Libation. My dad wanted to try another draft, so we looked at the menu. His English was passable after 30 years, but sometimes he'd ask me to translate things he didn't understand. I used to resent having to do this for him, but I miss it now. I did my best to translate creamy head and light amber hops for one called the Talon Curler, and he ordered it. A lanky man, probably in his 40s, sat down across the bar and scowled. "Hey, you dirty shits! This is Connecticut! Speak English or get out!" he bellowed. "Rufus, come on! This is a craft brewery, not a dive." The bartender poured a sample of a porter and said, "Try this, it's the Hootie Hoo." Rufus downed it. "You're right, let me get around." The bartender poured and Rufus intercepted the glasses. He produced globs of snot into each pint, mixing with his thin finger. He grinned with baleen thin teeth as he put them before us. My dad squinted, then exclaimed, "Pook guy!" Drop dead. He exploded from his stool, face now rosy with rage. He brought the stool over his head. Rufus was surprised as my dad swung at his back with a blur of black pine. Dad landed a few knocks before backing away and panting, "I made it here, I'm staying here. You lucky I'm old." He was 57. Rufus rose like disturbed sawdust. "Cheap shot, sneaky little bastards," he said before lunging at my dad. I pushed my dad away and stumbled backwards after catching his right cross. I settled myself and flailed a front kick to Rufus's gut that nudged him to the bar. The bartender stopped us with, "Get out or I'll call the cops." Did he mean us or the racist? Rufus seized in the bartender's grasp. We lurched to the exit. Dad yelled at Rufus and perhaps the bystanders, "Hamga-chan, sixiya!" Literally, curse your whole family, eat shit. I sped in silence until he sighed. Once I landed here, I said I'd never be disrespected by anyone for what I am. I could have helped more, I lamented. His rough hand landed on my shoulder. "We shouldn't have to fight to exist," he said. At a rest stop, we had Big Macs. As a boy, I enjoyed the darkness of the ball pit at the McDonald's playground back home. My dad never rushed me. He'd order a Happy Meal and sat until I emerged when ready.
Okay. Elisa Papro lives in Flatbush, Brooklyn, and works as a freelance writer. Her reporting has been published in various outlets in the U.S. and abroad. Her poetry has appeared in Collision magazine and the Best Emerging Poets of Pennsylvania anthology, and her fiction has been published in the Saturday Evening Post.
I've made such minor editorial changes. I'll lose my mind if I don't have them in front of me, I guess. Okay. If we told you we all have the same silhouette, you would not believe us. If we told you we all have the same shoe size, that our hair is the exact same length to the millimeter, that we are, statistically, the best mountaineering rescue crew in all of recorded and unrecorded human history, undaunted by darkness, undeterred by wicked weather, uninhibited by the limitations of our bodies, you would not believe us. If we told you that we had not once lost a body out here, you would not believe us. A certain acquiescence comes with altitude, which means the higher we go, the more you're willing to see. A girl, 8 years old, and her father went birdwatching up the pass. The girl followed the throaty coo of a mourning dove through the woods beyond the marked trail. Her father called to her in all the ways he knew how, but eventually we saw fit to step in. Now we are moving through these woods, our feet hopping over humped roots, through thick patches of ferns and across fallen trunks sporting fungal underbellies. We hear a rustling in the trees. All of our heads turn at once toward the sound, to find only a buck rutting. We are still at fairly low elevation, but we suspect that the girl has gone higher, and we turn upward toward the slope. We pass through a grove of white birch, its paper-thin bark responding to the wind rushing in from the east. The mountain has let down one long, invisible lead, and it tugs all of us toward the summit. We can feel her urgent movement, the light footfall of her feet tracking upward. If we are said to operate anywhere, it's the understory, the place where folklore is seated and flourishes, with the elderberry and mountain laurel and the rhododendron, which sometimes washes entire hillsides in pink, and the black cohosh and bloodroot, the plants named for spirits and medicine, and the fern and ivy, the lush green, the shin ticklers. Somewhere around midday we come upon the bald, spinal blades of wheatgrass pitched toward the direction we know we must go. We could see the imprint the girl's body left, the ghost of her intuition still maintaining shape in the grass. We arrive finally at the ridge, where tulip poplars, chestnuts, and oak once gave way entirely to red spruce, but we arrive at nothing. The top of the mountain was removed here to expose a long coal seam that turns like a black river around its crest. Some of us have been here long enough to remember a time before the mountaintop was excavated, before the valley below was littered with asphalt shingle and gabled roofs, one next to the other with crystalline pools and hexagonal lawns filling the gaps between. Some of us remember a time before a sense of direction was needless. Those memories are like being alive, distant, downhill, like a dream without meaning. We join hands at the flat top of the mountain. We stand shoulder to shoulder in the whipping wind. We can no longer feel the father's anxiety. When the time comes, we ring out clear and uniform. We are all on the same pitch. We all have the same reason for singing. Ours is a song like breathing, and it dances across the mountain range. The note we carry tickles even the snow-capped, unreachable distance, the places we haven't been and will never go. In the valley, the windows vibrate almost imperceptibly in their panes. At the peak of our chorus, another voice joins our choir, high and resounding and full of new fervor. We have never lost a body out here, not one.
Okay, our last reader for this evening is Harriet Walker. Please welcome Harriet Walker to the podium.
The juxtaposed train ride. It was after 11 p.m. and I had just left work. Descending the stairs to the nearby empty New York City train station, My only thought was connecting to the next train that would take me home. Man, was I wrong. What I didn't know was a sinew of situational errors was about to occur that would completely derail my evening trip into an early morning commute. Not an overnight sensation. At the moment, not a comedy of errors. As I swiped my path card to pass through the turnstile, it wouldn't revolve. I attempted swiping my card again and again and again, yet the turnstile wouldn't move. I presumed if authorities were watching on camera, they would have said something over the loudspeaker, or they would have seen my several failed attempts to pay my fare. So I boldly walked through the open gate. While I was standing on the platform, an officer on his radio walked over to me. I showed him my path card and told him it didn't work at the turnstile. He requested my identification, which I presented. I guess I had the correct address and zip code, as he excused my misdemeanor with a warning. My actions were impetuous, as my only concern was to board the PATH train and go home. I simply acted without objection. Sometimes a lack of reasoning is just an excuse to not do what you already know is right. One has to learn the hard way. If you rush into a situation, the consequences may not be desirable. And if an undesirable conclusion prevails, one has to ask themselves, are they prepared for the outcome? Just as the officer and I were about to part company, another officer was taking a fare bearer's personal information, to which the officer who detained me stated, "See, that could have been you if he hadn't responded." I thanked the officer for his advice, shook his hand, and trotted off to wait for the train. By this time, I forgot about making good time on my commute home. I realized not paying my fare was a criminal act, but I thought whoever was watching on the monitors would have seen me struggling with several attempts to pay my fare at the only turnstile and excused my walking through the gate. I took a chance on fate and was caught. Now I realize no act is innocent, and your karma will be based on your deed. I chose to justify my actions to make them seem correct. So what's for dinner?
Okay, so I'm going to do another big round of applause for all the readers. I also just want to say it is very exciting to hear people read things that I sometimes saw start in class. It's just very cool for me to hear both like how it's developed and also that you're all here doing this. I know some of you are, if not first-time writers, then maybe first-time readers presenting, and it warms my heart to see all of you. I also want to plug the Writer's Rock for anybody new, where if you were thinking, oh, maybe I want to write something, maybe I don't know if I want to write something and I want to find out, and I could use a prompt, I could use some community, I could use some feedback, please come find me, please sign up for the mailing list, take a flyer, take a bookmark, buy a copy of this book that has all the work you just heard plus much more in it. You can buy them at the desk there. And I want to take a quick photo of everybody. So if you can all smile even with your masks on and just look really excited to be here, because you are. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, can we just like actually like mean it a lot bigger? Like hands, like get it all like, yeah, woo! Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody.
Readers tonight. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful night. If you want to have celebratory drinks afterwards, there's lots of great bars in the area. Maybe head on down to DSK. But otherwise, enjoy browsing the bookstore.
We're heading to DSK, which is...
You're heading to DSK.
At the end of the block. On the right. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I want you to do some of this recording. Oh, so you
Colin Dante, will you please turn off the music?
That was gonna be the but that was like, good. Good. Oh, cool.
I said that you were starting to record because you didn't really want to hear
Background. What was